himself.
What's good, everybody? Let's talk some Tampa sports. Will Jason Light and this front office go big fishing in this offseason when it comes to a pass rusher? The last 3 seasons, the Buccaneers have not had a pass rusher hit double-digit sacks. It has been a clear need for this team for a while now. This year, just like the last 2, it was it just kind of screamed to you when you watch this defense. They need an elite pass rusher. Here are your sack leaders from 2022. Vita Vea, your 350-pound run-stopping defensive tackle, led the team with 6.5 sacks. Then Devin White, 5.5, Anthony Nelson, 5.5, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, 4, Winfield, 4. Not good enough. Here is 2023. Yaya Diaby, first with 7.5 in his rookie year. That was extremely hopeful and loved the trajectory there. Antoine Winfield Jr. had 6, Vita Vea, 5.5, Joe, 5, Levante, 4.5. Once again, not double digits, not anything elite from that pass rushing area, especially from the edge. And then we get to the most recent season, 2024. Khalil Mack led the team with 7.5 sacks. Vita Vea had 7. Levante David had 5.5. Logan Hall had 5.5. Yaya Diaby had 4.5. Overall, the Bucs manufactured a good amount of sacks this season. It's just they don't have that elite edge rusher that teams just have to respect to the max. We know we got to watch the double teams. The quarterback knows he's going to be coming. I have to get the ball out quicker. They just don't have that guy that puts an offense under pressure. The way an edge rusher can completely disrupt a game for an offense when he gets in his groove, we haven't seen that in a long time. Since Shaq Barrett in his peak, 19.5 sacks. The defense had to account for Shaq Barrett because they knew he was coming. They knew he was going to time that snap perfectly, and you better get your hands on him. Haven't had that. We all as fans know it's a need. In my opinion, it's the biggest need on this team. And I think the front office, they clearly know it's a need. They tried to get ahead of this issue in 2020. They had Shaq. They had JPP. They had Sue. They had Vita Vea. But they knew those first 3 names I just listed were not getting any younger. So in 2020, after the 2020 season, they try to cover up that future issue that ended up presenting itself. And it just didn't land. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka was the guy that was supposed to step into place once Shaq started aging and JPP started aging. They just didn't hit. But they saw the issue coming, and it's still an issue to this day because they have not hit on it. The next season, they go defensive line again with their first pick, Logan Hall, who has become a pretty good run stopper. I'll give him that absolutely. He's still only 24 years old, had 5.5 sacks this season. I think the trajectory is still on the way up for Logan Hall. He still has some developing to do. But elite, what this video is about, and the guys we're going to talk about later in this video when I talk about the big fish that the Bucs may go after, it's not that. Then 2023, Khalil Mack led the team in sacks this year from an interior position. That's fantastic. Yaya Diaby, 7.5 sacks in his rookie year, but then kind of dropped off a little bit this year. Absolutely love what both of those guys have brought throughout their first 2 seasons. Cansey, while dealing with some injuries, has wreaked havoc in certain games and always is a threat from that interior position with his athleticism, moves. Yaya Diaby on the other side has become a really good run stopper, fantastic at setting the edge, still working and developing those pass rush moves. Once again, only in his second season, there's still time to grow, still time to develop. Hopefully, maybe we can get a new coach along that, for those edge rushers and develop them a little more. We'll see about that. But once again, you get the story. Nothing elite. The most previous draft, 2nd round, they go Chris Braswell, and he just did not, I don't think he even got enough playing time to be able to develop and anything that we would be able to recognize. He had some nice plays later on in the season, but, they just kept letting Joe Tryon-Shoyinka go out there and just not produce. Joe ended up with 2 sacks all of last season. So like I was saying, the Bucs clearly see this need along the defensive line. The issue is they have not had the capital to be able to address it outside of the draft. That makes sense. When you go all in when Tom Brady's here, you end up with a bunch of dead cap after Tom Brady leaves. So when free agency comes around and trade deadlines, you don't have that much capital to work with. And if you do use any of the capital that you do have, you're going to end up like the Saints. So that's what they've had to work with in this front office, and they've had to try to address this pass rush issue through the draft and just hope they hit on one of these guys. I think they've hit on a couple guys, but it's the draft. Guys have to develop. This year, things have changed. That dead cap number continues to go down year after year. You restructure some guys here, some players end up getting cut there. Even if this happens, the Bucs will have cap space to work with. There is a way, there is a possibility to go after one of these players that we're going to talk about here. It's going to cost you some money, but that's the life of an edge rusher. The three most important and the three highest paid positions: quarterback, the guy that protects the quarterback, and the guy that gets after the quarterback. That's just how it is. All right, I'll leave his stats on the screen for you guys here to look over. Of course, the first guy we're going to be talking about, I think is the biggest name that I continue to see Bucs fans talking about, is Max Crosby. His situation is playing with the Las Vegas Raiders. As you can see, 4 Pro Bowls in a row, a couple of second-team All-Pros, 1 first-team All-Pro, and he's a stud, and he plays with that fire, and he has that he's that locker room guy that you want, that leader that you want. Issue is, he has zero interest. He has stated himself he has no interest in going through a rebuild during the prime of his career, and that's the direction that the Las Vegas Raiders are heading in, is a rebuild. So, how much pressure does Max Crosby put on front office, now John Spytek, to make a trade happen? He said himself he does not want to go through a rebuild. I will say ahead of time, trades like this don't happen often. You don't see really good quarterbacks getting traded. You don't see really good tackles getting traded, and it's rare you see a really good edge rusher get traded. I'll say that off the bat. Because, like the point I just made before going into Max Crosby, those are the 3 most important positions. If you have a really good one, probably a good idea to hang on to that because they're hard to find. Situations happen. Players put pressure on front offices. Rebuilding. Maybe let's get rid of this guy. We won't be a contender until maybe 3 years down the line. Maybe that's what the Raiders front office looks like. Hey, this is the roster we have. This is the depth chart we have. It's going to take us 3 drafts or free agency classes to get to that point, to get to that mountaintop. By that time, Max Crosby's going to be 30 years old, and during those 3 years, we're going to be paying him about $30 million a year. Is that a good idea, or should we just get some capital for him? And that's what teams end up doing sometimes. They're just like, this is a very important player, the very important position, but he doesn't fit what we're going through, which is a rebuild. Let's get some capital. So let's go over some examples of when this has happened. Oddly enough, it has happened with the Raiders. The Raiders traded Khalil Mack in the prime of his career to the Chicago Bears. At 27 years old, Khalil Mack was traded by the Raiders to the Bears prior to the 2018 season. The Raiders received a first-round pick and a sixth-round pick in 2019, and a first-round pick and a third-round pick in 2020, while the Bears received Khalil Mack and a second-round pick and a fifth-round. So, in this situation, it took 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick, pretty much, to get Khalil Mack, and then the Bears got Khalil Mack and a second-round pick. So just to give you an idea of the potential cost. Next, we're going all the way back to 2006. Yes, this is how rare players of this stature at this type of position gets traded. It does not happen often, guys. At 26 years old, Jared Allen was traded by the Chiefs to the Vikings. The Chiefs received the Vikings' first-round pick, 2 third-round picks, and swapped 6th-round picks. So in this situation, only 1 first-round pick, but also 2 third-round picks, and they only got Jared Allen in return. They didn't get a second-round pick in return like the Bears did with Khalil Mack. So there's a couple examples just to, I'm not saying this is what the cost is going to be. Obviously, I can't predict that. I don't know where John Spytek's mind is at with the rebuild, the plan of that Vegas Raiders team. But these are just some examples to give you guys reference. Next up is Trey Hendrickson. The Cincinnati Bengals are probably going to end up paying Ja'Marr Chase an insane amount of money. And when Hendrick's contract is up, he's going to be 31 years old. Are they going to, first off, even have the money to pay him? Second off, want to pay him that money when they're already paying Joe Burrow that much money, Ja'Marr Chase that much money, T. Higgins? You know what I'm saying? So this is another guy that we may be looking at. Hey, we're not going to have money for him in a year. Let's go ahead and get some capital for him and let some other team pay for him. This is another guy. 30 years old, so 3 years older than Max Crosby, but the numbers he has put up are insane. Just like Max Crosby, a Pro Bowler the last 4 seasons. It's funny because he goes from the Saints to the Bengals and then just Pro Bowl every single year. And the last 2 seasons, 2023 and 2024, Hendrickson, 17 and a half sacks. No injury trouble. He's played 15 games, 16 games, 15 games, 17. Dude's an absolute stud. Only thing is that Max Crosby has on him is 3 years younger. So there's that. Next, if we're throwing the whole trade idea out of the window, the top dog when it comes to edge rushers in free agency, it's a very shallow pool of players when it comes to pass rushers. Josh Sweat is at the top of that list for the Philadelphia Eagles, has been there his entire career since 2018. He's had some up and down seasons. So in 2021, played 16 games, 7.5 sacks. 2022, 16 games, 11 sacks, 6.5. This past season, he had 8 sacks. So he's not that perennial double-digit sack guy like a Max Crosby or a Trey Hendrickson. But if you don't want to give up any draft picks or maybe potential players on your roster, he could be a guy you can look at. It goes without saying, for Max Crosby, for Trey Hendrickson, guys that they would trade for, they're only going to do that if they can sign him to a future contract. Max Crosby, his contract ends in 2 seasons. Trey Hendrickson, he only has 1 year left on his deal. So you're not going to give up, let's say, a first-round pick and a second-round pick, or who knows what it ends up being, just for them to walk after 1 or 2 seasons. These are going to be guys that you trade for them, you give them a new contract, and you have them for a few years as your elite pass rusher. Josh Sweat, like I said, he would be a free agent. So you don't have to give up any capital. You don't have to give up any draft picks. You just get to sign him, and he's on your team. Looking at his numbers, I don't see a way where he ends up being as much as a Max Crosby or a Trey Hendrickson. He's 27 years old, same age as Max Crosby, has only gotten double-digit sacks 1 time, but I'm showing you guys him because he's the top free agent, he's the top edge rusher. He's going to command some money just because that's what that position does and requires if you want to bring one onto your team. But he doesn't cost you that first-round pick or whatever it ends up being. So, and the last guy we'll talk about is Khalil Mack. I'm iffy on Khalil Mack. The reasons are because I don't want a Band-Aid, if that makes sense. I don't want to... Khalil Mack is going to be 34 years old next season, turning 35. So, that would be a Band-Aid for the pass rush situation. Now, if the front office has full trust that Yaya Diaby will evolve and develop into this elite pass rusher, sure, a Band-Aid works. It doesn't cost as much money as a Sweat, Hendrickson, or Crosby. And, it's just a couple years, they move on, and Yaya Diaby takes his role as the elite pass rusher on this team. But if there is question about Yaya Diaby becoming that elite pass rusher, then like I said, this is just a Band-Aid. And after 1 or 2 years, because it's going to be a short contract, he's older player, same age as Levante David pretty much, so if that gives you any idea. I mean, he's going to be here for 1 or 2 years and we're going to have the same issue. You see what I'm saying? There are plenty of young players on this defensive line that could end up developing into that though. Yaya Diaby, possibly. Kalaja Kansi, I still think is on the up. and Chris Braswell. We don't even really know what he is, what to expect from Braswell going forward. Who knows? He could burst onto the scene, and he's a second-round pick from Alabama, led the SEC in pressures in his final season in college. There's talent there. We just got to see it and develop it. So that's going to be it for me. Just want to share some discussion. Like I said, I think this is the Bucs' biggest need. So I wanted to talk about some trade possibilities, some free agent possibilities. Obviously, they could address this in the draft. Maybe they don't go after pass rush in these areas, but I recommend that they do, because the draft takes a couple years, and we've all seen that firsthand. So let me know in the comments what you guys think below. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Go Bucs, and y'all have a blessed one.
Hey, hey, Tampa Bay Bucks.